Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Genesis chapter 39 and 40. We're really setting things up in Egypt here so that we can get to Exodus, but there's more on that. There's more trickery to be had. There's more fun and adventures. Let's get started. This stuff really needs to be a Hollywood movie, but let's get down to the text. Chapter 39. When Joseph was taken down to Egypt, a certain Egyptian, Potiphar, a courtier of Pharaoh and his chief steward, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him out here. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he stayed in the house of his Egyptian master. And when his master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord lent success to everything he undertook, he took a liking to Joseph. He made him his personal attendant, and put him in charge of his household, placing in his hands all that he owned. And from the time the Egyptian put him in charge of his household, and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed his house for Joseph's sake, so that the blessing of the Lord was upon everything that he owned, in the house and outside. He left all he had in Joseph's hands, and with him there he put attention to nothing save the food that he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. After a time, his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and said, "Lay with me." But he refused. He said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here my master gives no thought to anything in his house, and that all he owns is placed in my hands. He wields no more authority in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except yourself, since you are his wife. How then could I do this most wicked thing and sin before God?" And as much as she coaxed Joseph day after day, he did not yield to her request to lie beside her, to be with her. One such day he came into the house to do his work. None of the household being there inside, she caught hold of him by his garment and said, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and got away and fled outside. When she saw that he had left it in her hand and had fled outside, she called out to her servants and said to them, "Look, he had to bring a Hebrew to dally with us. This one came to lie with me, but I screamed loud. And when he heard me screaming at the top of my voice, he left his garment with me and got away and fled outside." She kept his garment beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew slave whom you brought to our house came to dally with me, but I screamed at him at the top of my voice. He left his garment with me and fled outside." When his master heard the story that his wife told him, namely, "Thus and so your slave did to me," he was furious. So Joseph's master had him put in prison, where the king's prisoners were confined. But while he was there in prison, the Lord was with Joseph. He extended kindness to him and disposed the chief jailer favorably towards him. The chief jailer put in Joseph's charge all of the prisoners who were in that prison, and he was the one to carry out everything that was done there. The chief jailer did not supervise anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him. Whatever the Lord did made successful. Okay. The interesting thing here is Joseph is brought down into Egypt as a slave, but his master actually frees him. This is called manumission, where you free a slave. Now, I'm not quite familiar with the rules of it in ancient Egypt, but usually it involves the slave earning a certain amount of money on their own and being able to redeem themselves from their master. Then there's a ritual of some sort saying, "This man is no longer my servant." Now, the reason I say that is because it says Joseph chose to remain in his master's house as the head servant. If he was a servant, that's a different class than a slave. A slave, hey, you do what you're told. You have no choice in the matter. Also, when the time comes where Potiphar is pissed off at Joseph, then he throws him into the king's prison for the king's prisoners. If this is a lowly slave from a foreign land, he would have had him put in a low prison where, maggots are crawling all over everything, or killed. Because, again, you do have the power of life and death over your slaves. It's frowned upon, but at the same token, the slave is your property. It's like your cat or your dog, or it's not even the same thing as a human being. Slaves essentially lose their identity and become extensions of you. So if I had a slave and I sent them to you, they would be representing me in that particular exchange. Whether it's buying apples for the house or whether it's negotiating something. And that's how slaves are judged and how useful they are. Joseph is obviously a very useful slave, but useful enough that he's able to buy his way to being a servant. Potiphar is obviously treating him very well. And until the wife intervenes, again, Bible, sexist, written thousands of years ago, no reason to tread over that. But Potiphar's wife decides to convince him that her husband, that this servant is trying to sleep with her. And yeah, it's unpleasant, but same token, it's a good plot device. Because now you've gone from a third-degree relationship to the Pharaoh, which is Potiphar is one of Pharaoh's courtiers. Now he's in the prison with the Pharaoh's servants. It's a second-degree relationship. He's only one step away. Doesn't know the Pharaoh yet. But it doesn't matter. He's actually getting closer to his goal. And when he's in the prison, he's made chief prisoner. I don't think I need to explain what that involves, but basically he'd be the chief informer and all that sort of stuff. In the modern-day prison, the other prisoners would probably hate him, but in this case, maybe they liked him because we're going to see in chapter 40, they trust him enough to tell them their innermost secrets. So apparently he was well-liked by everybody, even though he was accused of trying to seduce another man's wife. Well, let's get into chapter 40 to see where we're going with this. Some time later, the cupbearer and baker of the king of Egypt gave offense to their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two courtiers, the chief cupbearer and chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the chief steward, in the same prison house where Joseph was confined. The chief steward assigned Joseph to them, and he attended them. When they had been in custody for some time, both of them, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, dreamed on the same night, each his own dream, and each dream with its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were distraught. He asked Pharaoh's courtiers, who were brought with him in custody to his master's house, saying, "Why do you appear downcast today?" And they said to him, "We had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." So Joseph said to them, "Surely God can interpret. Tell me your dreams." Then the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. He said to him, "In my dream there was a vine in front of me. On the vine were 3 branches. It had barely budded when out came its blossoms, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Joseph said to him, "This is its interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, the Pharaoh will pardon you and restore you to your post, and will place Pharaoh's cup in his hand, as was your custom formerly when you were his cupbearer. But think of me when all is well with you again, and do me the kindness of mentioning me to Pharaoh, as to free me from this place. For in truth, I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, nor have I done anything here that they should have put me in this dungeon." When the chief baker saw how favorably he had interpreted, he said to Joseph, "In my dream, similarly, there were 3 open-work baskets on my head. In the uppermost baskets were all kinds of food for Pharaoh that the baker prepares, and the birds were eating it out of the basket above my head." Joseph answered, "This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale you upon the pole, and birds will peck off your flesh. On the 3rd day, his birthday, Pharaoh made a banquet for all of his officials, and he singled out his chief cupbearer and his chief baker from among his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his cupbearing, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he impaled, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not think of Joseph. He forgot him. So, the dreams that Joseph is continually involved with. Interestingly enough, before, Joseph was going to his father, his father and his brothers to get a dream interpretation because he didn't know, and they were very scornful of him. But here, he's interpreting for other people, or rather he's saying, God is going to interpret your dreams for them. Joseph is very careful not to take credit for anything in his dreams, or that he reads into dreams, perhaps because of the experience he had with his brothers. We get the number 3 repeated a lot in this. 3 is perceived to be a sacred number, and when we're dealing with Egypt, Egyptian mythology loves to deal in sacred numbers. It's something that was very important to them. But we see Joseph now has a friend in the imperial court. And the chief baker, I don't know what the hell the chief baker and the chief cupbearer did, where one would get pardoned, the other sentenced to death, but I don't think it was their performance as, bringing the cup to your master and baking goods for him. Because the chief cupbearer, their job to bear the cup is to make sure that no poison gets into the wine, to make sure everything is done properly, and also to conduct rituals, blessings, things like that. A baker, however, is pretty much the same as today. Somebody who's out there cooking, making other people's meals, and making things taste yummy. I don't think you could possibly piss off a pharaoh enough to warrant execution, and for the both of them to be rounded up on the same day, just before a feast, it does seem like there might be some insurrection involved, something that would have really given Pharaoh a reason to just say, off with both of you. One of them is found innocent, so he changes his mind, and the other one is found guilty. So like you said, given the baker and the cupbearer, sounds like somebody tried to poison the Pharaoh. And he found out about it, and then when he got more details, said, oops, well, I can fix this. I'll release the right guy and get rid of the wrong guy. Either way, Joseph is now, in the course of 2 chapters, has gone from the possession of the Ishmaelites, sold to a 3rd-degree relationship with the Pharaoh, and now has moved up to his 2nd degree, and has the potential to become a 1st degree. But we'll save that for the next chapters. No matter what, we hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. If you feel like supporting this work, which we would be most honored, please feel free to check out the books in the link below. For the price of 99 cents a day, less than a cup of coffee, you can get an ebook or a physical book for less than $10 a day. You can reach out to the show at @Silverlight Live. That's @Silverlight Live, all one word, on Twitter. And we hope you have a fantastic day.